I'm here with Justin Lawnchair. So you are a musician with the band The Biscuit Merchant.
Might be a stretch to call it a band. It's more of a solo project, but I've played in bands for a while, but it's always been kind of a goal to kind of do my own thing, play every instrument. It's been done before, but not quite in the same progressive metal arena that I've been going for. But it's always been a dream of mine, so it's finally time to get that done.
Well, it's interesting that you're a one-man band,
right.
I guess, but would you call it, because I do a similar thing in a completely different genre,
right?
But I call it a virtual band,
right?
Because I release stuff online. Is that kind of the same idea that you go with?
More or less, yeah. It basically boils down to writing all of my own stuff, recording each individual instrument separately, and then just kind of Frankensteining it together until it sounds good.
Oh, okay. So I guess that's a big long process of learning. You said you played in a lot of bands before. What instrument did you start with?
Well, so I played piano a lot when I was a kid. Then I took up trumpet in band in middle school because they wouldn't let me play piano. And then right around 6th or 7th grade, I got into metal really heavily. And piano and trumpet aren't in that. So I kind of fell in love with the guitar. So I picked that up and been playing that for, almost 12 or 13 years. It seems insane that it's been that long. But ended up picking up bass just as a proxy because it's more or less the same, just bigger strings, and then picked up the drums, and then I was like, well, I guess I should learn how to sing too, and then had all 4 of them ready to go, so it's like, all right, well, see what we can do here.
Oh, that's cool. I was going to ask you about the drums. So those are actual live drums you recorded then?
Yes, they are live. I play on an E-kit, so it's MIDI, but it's still live input, so you get a lot more player feel, because I was doing a lot of stuff back in the early 2010s at home. I was playing guitar recorded into a really sucky microphone and programmed drums and programmed bass too, which I don't recommend anyone ever use because it doesn't sound good. But the thing that was always holding it back was programmed drums tend to sound really robotic, especially if you can't mess with the velocities or anything like that. So I decided to make the investment in an actual electronic kit. So it's still MIDI. It's still got that program sound a little bit, but I feel like you get a lot more personality out of it than if it was just straight programmed.
Yeah. So with the electronic kit, is that like the ones you see at Guitar Center with like the Roland, the mesh heads?
Yes, that's exactly the one I have. I have the one that has the mesh head on the snare alone because I've played on regular kits, so I like having a bit of a different feel on the snare as opposed to the times I played on the ones with the mesh heads all over the place, and it's cool, but I like having that differentiation. It makes it a little bit, it feels better to me. It's a crazy personal thing.
I like those mesh heads. They're fun. They can get really fast with those.
Oh, yeah. It's a really good investment. I mean, they make a lot of software. I use Addictive Drums, which allow you to kind of dial in. It's kind of like the virtual guitar rigs that they do just for drums. They have a ton of different sounds. Lots of different packs. You can get pretty much any sound you want. I mean, I did my girlfriend sings too, so we did a cover of the old song What's Up by Four Non Blondes. So I was like, all right, well, dial up the vintage guitar tone on Guitar Rig, dial up the vintage drums, and it sounds not quite as good as the real thing, obviously, because I don't have access to a full studio, but it's as close as you can get with digital instruments. And I swear they're not paying me to say this, but if you want to.
Yeah, it seems like with the amp emulations, they've gotten pretty good as far as and there's actually a lot of like famous musicians on stage that are playing through programs now rather than amps.
Yeah, and I really can't blame them because I mean the sounds come through really nicely, and if you're not really looking to go through it with a massively fine-toothed comb, I can't really think of anything that you could find to really come down on it for. I mean, the stuff that I use Guitar Rig 5 for most of my rhythm tones, and then I am a big fan of the Easy Mix Legends packs of the guitar. I mean, they put basically Jeff Loomis's entire sound library into Easy Mix form, and it's unbelievable. Like, all these kids that are out there. So like, oh, I want to play like this specific guy, and it's like now you can totally do that, and it doesn't require any work. Even it's not even fair, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes though I would say the options are they get to be too much and overwhelming a little
definitely.
bit. Sometimes you kind of just need to pick one and stick with it. Seems
Yeah,
like, or else you're gonna be sitting around changing amp styles all day long.
Right. I usually stick with the presets, especially on Easy Mix, because they're all dialed in pretty well. I like to mess with sounds more in the mixing phase because, I mean, I think most DIY musicians prefer to kind of go in with a more dry tone. That way you have a lot more room to manipulate it in the mixing phase, but that might just be me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how guitar tones and things have changed over the years because I was reading something about back in like the 60s or maybe the Jimi Hendrix sort of era of guitar music. It seemed like everybody wanted to have their own signature sound.
Oh, yeah.
At least the big guys coming out, they would all have like their tones and everything, but it would be something that they considered to be unique to them.
Right.
Nowadays, it seems like everyone wants to emulate all the sounds that they've heard before. I don't know if that's just because we feel like we've reached the pinnacle of what sounds good in guitars, or it's just a different change in attitude with people, and it's hard to say because it's like the same thing with writing songs. The same three chords have been used by everybody, so it's how do you come up with something that's original or unique? But
yeah, I'm very much of the opinion. I mean, the tone will get you a lot of places, but I very much believe that the tone doesn't necessarily make the player. I think as long as you have a personality in the way that you play, it's kind of a weird headspace to get into, but like you gotta feel like you're something other than the guitar. I don't know where I'm going with this. But I don't know. You understand what I'm saying? It's like there's only so much that good equipment can get you. Yeah. I think if you are seriously passionate about playing the guitar, I think your personality is going to shine through no matter what tone you have. Because I mean, the example I like to bring up is Dimebag Darrell from Pantera. That dude had one of the most wretched, vile tones I've ever heard in my life, but it's got a ton of personality and it fits the music perfectly, and that dude is regarded as one of the all-time legends. So, I mean, I don't think you should limit yourself to just tone alone.
Right. I think everyone's going to have their own unique style of playing, and everybody's going to sound a little bit different from the other stuff.
Definitely.
But, I had a guitar player, a buddy of mine, in here last week, and he had just bought the Les Paul, the one that everybody has, the standard orange red sunburst. I believe it's
right.
But I've just seen in playing in bands over the years, so many people get that guitar that I'm kind of like I got my old blue Washburn over here. I was joking with them. I'm like, yeah, check out my Washburn and crate combo. That's unique. And but I mean that Les Paul's it's a badass guitar, but it's also at this point it seems like it's almost an assembly line guitar. It's like everybody's got one.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. I mean, good equipment will get you somewhere, but I mean, I started on those. I had a 15-watt custom with a K amp and just a normal. It's got like the Stratocaster body, but it's just a Walmart guitar. You know, like it's not even a Squier, but cost me like $100. But hey, I learned how to play on it, and then eventually I totally fell in love with the Schecter line of guitars because man, those things are built to shred. There is absolutely nothing better.
Seem right on your genre of shredding guitars.
I'm looking at a Schecter 9-string at the moment, so if anyone wants to go out and buy my music so I can afford that, now would be a great time to do that.
Cool. Speaking of, where can we buy your music?
Oh, man, everywhere. They make it really easy now. I do all of my distribution through CD Baby, so they pretty much provide the digital copies of it anywhere.
So pretty much if you search for the Biscuit Merchant online, you'll find them.
You will find something.
iTunes, Amazon Music, Google Play.
iTunes, Amazon, Google Play. I highly encourage everyone to follow me on Spotify because in this day and age, being in a one-man band, CD sales do make a significant difference to me. However, in terms of future growth, the only way to make it anymore is to get featured on Spotify playlists, it seems like. And the best way to get that accomplished is to get more followers. So that's not just for me. Any independent musician that you want to support, follow them on Spotify. Buy their CDs too if you have the money, but I understand it's a crazy economic world we live in now, and not everyone can afford to buy music every week. I know I can't.
Yeah. So we were talking about recording when we got here. I'm using Reaper over
Right.
here. What do
Yep.
you use for your software for your DAW?
Oh yeah, Reaper is the only answer as far as
Yeah?
I'm concerned. I mean, it's free to download, so you can try it first,
Right.
and see if you like it. And if you decide you do like it, the license is like $60.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
really cheap.
compare that to anything. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people are, and maybe this is just in my circle of people, but people are kind of into that Ableton Live program lately, which is like, yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, I don't have any reason to move to anything else. I've learned the ins and outs of Reaper quite a bit. I mean, I basically learned how to use it when I was recording the first album, Knucklewalker, and there's no limitations to it that have caused me any problems yet. That may change in the future, but I don't see any reason to ever switch to anything else. It allows you to use all your plugins. I mean, I use Guitar Rig, Addictive Drums. There's no mess at all. It's like you buy something, you download it, you press a couple buttons, and it's there. It's just good to go. I can't ever use anything else. Side note, Reaper, if you want to sponsor me, that's fine too. This really feels like a big giant commercial for all the gear we use.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I've told people about their, because I was actually talking to a couple of young kids the other day about they were getting into recording and they were wondering what DAW to go with. And
Right.
it seems like everything is pretty much on an equal level when it comes to the quality that you can record.
Yeah, more or less.
It's more about understanding what your DAW can do and the features of it and just understanding the different programs. So, I mean, they were talking about Pro Tools and I was like, yeah, Pro Tools is good. It's like the
It's just
industry
expensive.
standard, but it's really expensive. Yeah.
Right.
I took Reaper and pretty much just customized it to look like Pro Tools.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
you know,
And that's
you're
the nice
still-
thing about open source software. You can do whatever you want with it. And that's the thing. I don't think Reaper has any limitations. Honestly, I haven't found
Yeah.
one yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it even comes with a ton of stock plugins that if you don't have plugins
Oh,
to get
yeah.
started with, I mean,
Yep.
all the EQs you would need or compressors.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I use ReEQ, Recomp, and Reverb pretty much exclusively. I have a different free EQ program. I use TDR Nova. I use that more for like mastering rather than the mix phase because I really like the way ReEQ is designed. I mean, you can do absolutely anything you would ever need to do with a multi-band EQ just with something that comes right out of the box. And I mean, Pro Tools just can't offer that, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really clean EQ. I like that. I use that. I got the Slate Digital bundle.
Yep,
I don't
got
know
that
if you-
too.
Yeah. I like they have the analog sort of modeled geared plugins, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I
I
love the
like-
tape machine. I think
Yeah.
the tape machine is probably my favorite.
Yeah, Slate makes really good stuff. I pretty much bought the bundle. I don't remember if the mastering plugin that I use came with that bundle. It probably did, but I've bought so much stuff from Slate. It's insane. The FG-6 or something like that. There's a mastering plugin that is
Yeah.
very, very well designed and full featured. And I mean, it's just as simple as literally the interface is like turning knobs. I
Right.
mean, it does not get any easier than that.
Yeah, yeah. I got that mastering program.
Mm.
I tend to send my mixes out to get mastered by a different engineer. Though.
Yeah, a lot of people recommend that, and if that's something that if I had the money to do it, I would definitely do it because I do agree that it's good to have a second perspective. But yeah, both of my releases that I've done so far, I did master on my own. I've done some mastering work for other people too, so not to say that it's totally foolproof, but I like to think that I can put myself in like a different mindset to try to get similar results, but there's definitely no doubt if I sent it out it would probably get better results, but you know, again, that pesky money thing.
Yeah.
It
Well, there's
hurts.
something to be said for doing everything yourself too. which is
That too. I mean,
pretty cool.
I really I fell in love with the idea of doing the whole thing myself, and I wasn't originally going to do the progressive metal thing as like my solo band project because I mean, drums are really hard. especially the type of drums that usually come out of progressive metal. I mean, I've been playing guitar for 14 years. I don't feel like there's no barrier for me when it comes to guitar. It's like I never have that thing where it's like you come up with a part and it's too hard, like you can't actually make it happen on the guitar. I don't have that. But drums, different story. I'm not the strongest with the double basses. But it got to the point where the stuff I was writing and just the drive that I had to actually get this done, I was like, well, I'm just gonna do what I can and hopefully it'll come out fine, and it did so far. So no stopping me now.
Yeah. So take me to the recording process then. When you get started on a new song, do you record them all differently, or do you do them all in a sort of similar fashion?
There's definitely a similar workflow. Like I feel like most everybody, it goes write, record, mix, and then ideally, send it off to get mastered by someone else. But if you're going to master, it's like you want to do that at the end when everything is done. But I mean, it depends. I mean, my songs get written either. I was actually talking to a friend of mine yesterday about this. There will be times where I'll wake up at 9 a.m. and I'll come up with like a riff or something, and it sounds good enough to me that it's like I'll just sit down at the DAW and pound it out, and then it's like, oh, this would sound cool with this. This would sound cool with this. 12 hours later, I got a fully mixed song, and sometimes it works. And I think any musician can attest to having that just random burst of extreme creativity that ends up with really good results. The song Descent of the Pariahs on my most recent release definitely came about in that fashion. Because, fun fact, the beginning of that, it's literally just me shredding. It was just a warm-up. And then I finished the warm-up, and then I went into the main riff of that song, and then everything just completely exploded from there. It was absolutely nuts. But there's definitely riffs on Nature Rejoices that I've been tooling with for 6 or 7 years. So, I mean, I can't say that I always do everything the same, but obviously the main process of getting it from my head to the CD or the MP3 or what have you is more or less the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I was curious because I started as a drummer, so when I record, I'll make like scratch tracks of like the song structure.
Oh, sure.
And then I'll record the drums first.
Yep.
So I'll get all the drum track done.
Yep.
And then I'll do usually bass next.
Yep.
But after I get the drums done, it mixes up. I can do it a lot of different ways.
Yeah, it's always guitar first for me, like a scratch track, just like you said. Scratch guitar track, I usually try to get a click together to make it fit nicely, but sometimes when you're working with a bunch of odd time signatures, the click tracks don't always sync up perfectly, and that really bothers me. But always scratch guitar, then drums, then I can't remember. It's been so long since I've actually done a song. It's been like 4 or 5 months. I don't remember if I do bass or guitar next, but it's always either bass or guitar, whichever one I feel like more. And then solos and vocals I kind of think of the same way because they're similar. They just kind of sit on top of everything else. So as long as you get the solid bass set up first and then you put your other ornaments on top of it, that's usually how I do it.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. So do you do any sort of like live representation of any of this stuff? Or?
Not at the moment. I'm kind of stuck because the things that I really like about what I do are the guitar and the vocals. And I'm not the strongest when it comes to doing guitar and vocals at the same time. So if I was to do a live show, I would want to sing and play guitar and play the leads because that's like my favorite part of doing everything. And that is just a lot to get nailed down. It would be cool to get with a band, like another drummer, another bass player, another guitar player to do rhythms and stuff, but frankly, I don't know if my physical capabilities are up to snuff to do some of the stuff that I've been recording.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the same problem where it's like, how do you replicate what you did in a studio in a live, and especially when you're playing all the instruments, like obviously you can't play drums and guitar at the same time.
Exactly.
I messed around with like loop pedals and things like that, trying to get it together, but it does become pretty overwhelming pretty quick.
Yep. I mean, I try really hard to make sure that all the stuff I do is still rooted in reality, like it could be played live, but I don't I definitely don't limit the song. Like, I won't scrap a vocal line because it's like, oh, that'll be too hard to sing and play guitar at the same time. I mean, I think the advantage of not playing live is that you can do that. You don't have to worry about, like, I don't know, are you familiar with Foxy Shazam at all?
A little bit.
Awesome band. Their albums sound like monstrous, beautiful creatures of insanity. But when they play live, and it's nothing against them, they still put on a great show because they have a lot of energy. It just doesn't sound the same because they use all these overdubs and these big choruses, and the dude's voice is layered like 40 times, and it's you can't replicate that live. And I never, ever want to be stuck in a situation where that would happen. And I'm already stuck there because I just remembered there's a lot of stuff on the new album, especially where there's like 4 or 5 vocal tracks. There's one where I'm doing like high stuff. I've got one where I'm doing low growls, and then there's like a couple harmonies in between. I mean, it wouldn't work live,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I just wouldn't choose to play those.
I
but-
mean, there's something to be said for, just putting it out as a audio format on the internet, too.
Oh, of course,
I mean,
yeah.
not everything is meant to be live. Maybe that piece of artwork or a song is just meant to be living in the digital realm.
Oh,
or
yeah.
the.
And there's songs that would be cool to play live. Like, I mean, if I had to pick like 3 or 4, I would really like to do Static, Perspective, God is in the Mountain. Those 3 would be really cool to do live, and not too hard. I mean, those ones, obviously the ones where it's mostly just like brrr, screaming and stuff would be easier because there's no conflicting melody that I would have to sing to go along with the guitar parts. But yeah, those would be cool. So drummers, bass players, if you're out there and you feel like playing crazy stuff and it might be a total failure, hit me up.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool, man. So you said you're into coffee.
Ugh. That's an understatement. My number one dream in life would be to open up, and it's kind of like the zebra philosophy. It's like you don't know if they're white with black stripes or the other way around. I don't know if it would be a coffee shop with a recording studio in the basement or a recording studio with a coffee shop upstairs, because I like both of those so much. And it's just, yeah, I mean, I can't,
Yeah.
I know a lot of people can't live without a cup of coffee in the morning, but
Well, studio spaces too. They're one of those
Oh,
things
yeah.
where coffee is. I don't know if you've seen the Dave Grohl things where
Oh,
it's
of course.
fresh pots, fresh pots. But yeah,
Absolutely.
sometimes in the studio you're up all hours of the night, and
Yeah.
sometimes you need to just. People want coffee just for the caffeine boost. Some people
Exactly.
don't even
Yep.
drink coffee, go in the studio, and they're like, "I need coffee because I'm in the studio."
Well, and it's like my mind just goes nuts whenever I think about the practical implications of actually doing something like that, because, I mean, there's so much you could do with it. It's like you got a recording studio with a coffee shop on top, so you book a band to come in and use the studio, and it's like, okay, free coffee. It's like that immediately gives you a leg up over recording studios that don't have coffee bars. And then I start thinking, it's like, oh, we could have like a CD rack at the front desk of the coffee shop. You could sell the artists that have recorded there. You could have closed circuit TVs. I digress. It could be awesome. No
Yeah.
one steal that idea from me, please.
No, man, that's a good idea. I don't know,
Yeah,
man.
right.
It might get stolen.
I know. It
So,
might-
all right. Well, what's your favorite? Do you have a favorite brand of coffee or a favorite style?
well, I'm definitely into lattes more than anything else, which I know is kind of fruity. It's like most metalheads are like
I was gonna
black
ask
metal,
you-
black coffee.
I was
It's like,
gonna,
no.
I was gonna say, what's a latte?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. The coffee podcast begins. So a latte is usually 2 shots of espresso, a bunch of steamed milk, and then usually like a flavor shot or something like that. So there's a place up in Ann Arbor where I live and operate called Ruse Roast, which is the greatest coffee shop in the universe and is absolutely worth the trip no matter where you are. They have a honey and vanilla latte. They use raw local honey. They have their own vanilla syrup that they make in-house, and it is absolutely divine. And I can't imagine a greater way to start any morning ever.
What was that one called?
That's called Ruse Roast. So it's ROOS. It's the dude's last name. His name's John Roos. So Ruse Roast Coffee in Ann Arbor. It's on Rosewood. Delicious.
I'll have to check that out.
Absolutely.
I've been playing a lot of solo acoustic shows, and coffee shops seem to be a
yeah.
good venue to play. I'm actually playing at the Spirited Goat Coffee House this month.
Ooh.
And next month, Coffee Amici in Findlay.
Yeah, I love the coffee shop naming conventions too. They just seems like they always have to come up with something really out there. Like the place up in Perrysburg that I really like, the Flying Joe, or like you said, the Spirited Goat.
Yeah.
It's like you have to have this weird buzzword. There's a place in Ann Arbor called Mighty Good coffee, and nothing against them, but I think it was kind of mediocre. So it's kind of a lie.
Yeah. Well, my coffee background is I only drink black coffee,
Ah, yes.
and I grind whole beans and I French press them.
Yep.
So I would say, I don't know, my favorite right now is I really like Ethiopian Yirgacheffe.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know how deep down that rabbit hole you've gone. But
Not too deep into the like
straight
the
up real
beans
coffee?
and the single origin, all that stuff. But
yeah.
I know
Not to make fun of you or anything, but I'm a real coffee snob. You're a latte.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I've been getting into. Roost Roast has a couple different straight up coffees that I have been getting
Yeah.
into a little more lately.
Yeah, if
mostly
I
'cause
see
I'm trying
if I see single origin, I light up. I'm like, ooh,
yeah,
no flavors. I don't want any of that crap.
well, and honestly, Roost Roast's number one claim to fame is they roast their own beans. First off,
That's a good thing.
yeah, they have. I don't know what you actually call it. I call it a strain, like I'm talking about weed or something. So they have a strain of beans called Lobster Butter Love, which does not taste like lobster. It does not taste like butter. It does taste like love. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's the only black coffee I can drink without cream.
Wow.
Doesn't have any like nasty aftertaste. It's the only coffee I have found that tastes as good as it smells.
Wow.
It's excellent stuff.
Have you ever had the one that they, what is that? Is it Kerouac? No, it's not Kerouac. That's an actual coffee shop. What's the one where there's the civet, I think, that poops out the beans and they recycle them? I think those are pretty expensive, so I'm guessing you probably haven't tried that.
I've heard of that. That's going to have to go back into it's like, if you want me to try the poop coffee, you got to buy my music.
Yeah. It's like $50 a cup or something.
Yeah, I've heard about that. I wonder how that would taste, because I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there, myself included, who are big coffee snobs. So I mean, do you sit back and you kind of like swish it around in your mouth, and it's like, yes, I can really taste the inner intestinal lining on this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think they get that flavor.
No?
from it.
Okay.
No, I think
I don't think it would
I
sell
think it's
very
more
well.
about whatever their digestive tract does to the beans somehow smooths out some of the.
Oh, okay.
But I'm pretty sure it's once they collect them again, I think that they're washed.
I hope so. I feel like you'd have a couple lawsuits on your hands pretty quick.
It is really weird. It's like, how did they come up with that for the first time, though?
Dude,
Like,
I don't
who
know.
was the person that saw the pile of poop and decided to pick the bean out of it?
I don't know, dude. I mean, you think, I really hope no one's enjoying this podcast over lunch.
Yeah.
I think if you think about it too hard, you can come up with a lot of examples of that. It's like, who decided to just eat the thing that came out of the chicken's butt? It's like, hey, let's crack this open and fry it up.
Yeah.
Who decided? It's just like, well, I used to drink milk when I was a kid out of my mother. It's like, this cow, what's up with this?
Yeah, we're gonna
Let's see what's going on with this.
Cow's milk. Yeah.
Give me your nectar.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Humanity.
There's definitely a lot of weird things people do for sure.
Yeah, a little bit. I think that's probably why a lot of my music comes across as that that hatred of humanity kind of thing. Because I don't know if you know, but the Nature Rejoices is kind of a concept record of how humans destroy the world and how we would be so much better if we had never been here. But I don't know.
So with the concept, was that your most recent album? Or
Yes.
Yeah. So how did you kind of? I mean, I guess that's a big picture item.
It is.
To put it together.
Definitely.
Is it lyrically a concept? Is it musically a concept? All of the above.
A little bit of everything. I grew up really enamored by Dream Theater and Devin Townsend and dudes like that who do these big grandiose projects. So I really like the idea of recurring themes and kind of treating something almost like a classical composition. Like a lot of the old, like Beethoven is my god. Like I can listen to anything he has ever done and it'll make me really happy. So the big conceptual arc of Nature Rejoices is, it starts and it ends the same way. It's got this kind of quiet, clean guitar motif that it starts off with on Starborn, and then at the end of the title track, there's this big bombastic ending, and then it kind of calms down, it fades out, and then it's that same motif again. The concept mostly stems from the title track. That's kind of operating under the assumption that there's like a group of overseers that are watching humanity, and they're like, okay, you guys are done, and they just kind of yank it on us. All the songs before it, they don't necessarily fit into that concept like perfectly like a glove, but you can make arguments for all of the other songs that at the root they're about shitty things that humans do, basically. I mean, Blame Society is about politics and how nobody's willing to actually do anything. We're just going to yell at each other forever. God is in the Mountain is kind of a fictional story about how people are always asking God for everything, and he's just kind of like, shut up, like, leave me alone, please. Incubus is about bad relationships. Descent of the Pariahs is about animal testing. What You've Become is about the Me Too movement and sexual harassment. So, I mean, you can draw lines pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. So, would you say it's a politically charged, sort of, along those lines, or?
I guess so. I mean, it's really easy to write about that for me, because, I mean, I struggle with lyric writing a lot, and I think a lot of musicians do, because it's hard to come up with insightful things and then put them to music as well.
Yeah.
So the things that get me riled up more than anything is politics. So usually if I'm passionate about something, that's what ends up coming out. But I mean, there's only 2 songs that I would say are completely outwardly political. The other stuff might have ties to it deep down, but well, I don't know. I mean, there's a couple songs on Knuckle Walker too that are like that. So maybe I am a political musician. Yeah. That's okay with me though.
I think with your style of music though, it kind of opens the door for that sort of.
It is kind of a thing. I mean, I'm definitely not a pioneer in that regard. I mean, I'm definitely into like the early 80s punk scene, and that's all they talk about. I mean, it's still all they talk about.
Yeah.
It's either politics or if you go to the Blink-182 route, it's about farting.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think politics are maybe a touch more mature.
Yeah.
But maybe not. I don't know.
But I think a lot of times the style of music that you're playing can dictate sort of the subject matter
Oh,
that
totally.
you sing about. So like rock music tends to be, anti-establishment.
Of course,
and
absolutely.
they tend to be,
Yep.
there's a lot of more angry songs, it seems like.
Yeah.
And then if you want to go into more happy music, that's more of,
Right.
I don't know, it's hard to find happy music.
Oh, yeah,
but,
it is.
That's more of, I guess, a pop sort of genre,
Right.
I would think.
It's hard to write about happy stuff too. I mean, I understand why all the pop music is just about dancing and fucking. Like,
Yeah.
it seems like that's the only good things we have left.
I've written a couple of sort of semi-happy songs. But
yeah.
those are the hardest songs to write.
They
And
are.
It's like,
yeah.
I'll show it to my parents or whatever, and they'll be like, why is your music so dark? And it's like, well, when I play a guitar riff that sounds heavy, and
Yeah.
I really love it because it's
Right.
like, "Drum,"
Of course, absolutely.
When I think about what to sing to that, I'm not going to think about flowers. I'm going to think
Yeah,
about
it doesn't work.
something that makes me angry, or
Right. Exactly. I mean, it totally comes with the territory. I get where you're coming from. There's definitely no room on pretty much anything on Nature Rejoices for anything other than anger. I mean, there's soft parts on it, but I mean, it's all very dark. There's no, the only bright spots on the album happen at the very beginning and the very end when it's implied that humanity is dead, which, that's kind of dark in and of itself, I guess.
Now you can go with the most used subject of all time, which is writing about love and relationships.
Oh, yeah. I
Do you
did
have any
that.
songs about girls?
Well, there's one song on Knuckle Walker that I hate to death because it is kind of about that. The song is called Dead Ends and Split Ties, which, I mean, that's about as emo a song title as you can possibly get. And it was also one of the first things I recorded, so the amateur level of the recording and the mix is very apparent, even among other songs on that album. So I'm not ashamed to admit that if I ever go through Knuckle Walker and I listen to it, I skip that song. But conversely, everyone I talk to about my music seems to like that song, and it kills me because it's like there is so much better stuff out there. But lyrically, it definitely comes across like it's about a failed relationship. But the impetus of it was actually more about the band that I was playing in college. We ended up in a situation where we had to kick out one of our members because they were in a relationship with another member of the band and they had broken up, and it got weird really quick. So
Kind of like working with or your dating your coworkers.
it really is. I mean, if things go down, it gets really weird really quick, and that just wasn't a fun experience. So it was just one of those things. I tend to let, if I ever have something affect me to that level, I will almost always try to write a song about it, because I don't find that very much. So it was pretty, I mean, it's kind of low-hanging fruit, but it's just like, oh, I'm feeling emotions. Let's write a song.
Yeah.
But, yep, so just the one. I prefer to write about either fictional stuff or, like, current event, like, political issues. I don't like to write about my feelings. Because I think a lot of times what happens is you feel a certain way. I mean, everyone in real life can attest to this. It's like you might be like really hot about something, like really mad or like really sad, and then you look back on the way you were feeling and something you might have done, like if you broke something, and then you look back and you're just like, oh man, I am such a child.
Yeah.
Because there's 2 songs on Knuckle Walker. Well, just one, I guess, because Perspective is about other stuff. But Static, that song is completely about just feeling directionless and bored and depressed. And it's like the lyrics haven't aged poorly to me yet, but that's a song that I could see looking back on in 10 years thinking it's like, aw,
Didn't
you
quite
little
hold up.
baby.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how that works. I always have that in the back of my mind. Like, am
Right.
I going to like this in the future?
Yeah.
But usually when you're in the forest, it's kind of hard to see the trees.
That's very true.
But the good thing is, I can say this, because I've been recording music for a long time and
Right.
releasing stuff, but my first few albums are a little bit cringeworthy, but it does it's gotten a lot better for me over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Yep.
my latest release, the only thing I cringe about now is the actual mixing that I
Oh,
may
my
have done,
God,
because that's
yeah.
a whole other ball game of
And it will
learning how
never
to-
go away.
Yeah.
That's the most irritating thing. It's like you're always learning
your
new
ears
stuff.
get better and better, and
Exactly.
you start
Yep.
hearing new
Yep, yep,
things,
yep.
and you're like, "Ooh, I could have done this a little bit differently here. I could have
Yep.
made this snare sound a little bit, smoother." Or
Yep. I did 6 albums. I put that in big air quotes because they're not professional sounding at all. Back in high school, like I mentioned earlier, the program drums and playing the guitar through an amp into a really sucky microphone. And Knuckle Walker was the first thing I did that actually sounded even remotely professional. So that CD never left my car for a long time because I was so proud of it. Like, it sounded so good to me. And then the time came to do Nature, and then I had finished that one and started listening to that in my car all the time, and I was like, man, this sounds so good. Like, it's amazing. It's like I didn't really even learn anything. Then I went back and I put on Knuckle Walker again, and I realized I had learned a lot because the Nature sounded way better.
oh,
And then you go back and you listen to all this stuff, and it's just like, oh my God, how did I think this was okay?
yeah,
Then you get stuck in that, it's like, oh, I should do this again, like remix, remaster it, and then you do that until you're dead.
yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the things a lot of people don't understand about mixing is that everything that you hear on the radio has had the standard of excellence, because
Right.
it's like there's professionals that have been doing it for 30 years, mixing all those songs. So everybody, the average person, when they hear a local musician who's maybe not good at mixing or
Right.
recording,
Yep.
the first thing they do is they kind of look at it and they think, I don't really like this music.
Yeah, right.
But it's not so much the music; it's
No.
more the mix that they're used to the standard of excellence.
Right,
And if
of
it's
course.
not, if it's not excellent, if it's not perfect, then people are like, it's not. It's almost like watching a badly filmed movie. The
Oh,
story,
yeah,
the
it's
story
the
may
same.
be
Yep.
great, but if you have like crappy camera work or crappy edits or weird shots, and you can just tell, oh, somebody did this in the backyard because it's not quite. Not
Well,
quite there.
and
And
the
I'm not
most-
saying like that's just the struggle I think for a lot of
Oh, of course.
mixers.
No, it really is. I mean, any creative endeavor which you're doing mostly yourself, you're expecting it. It's like you watch all these big budget things and you're like, yeah, I could do something like that, right? You know, it's like I write, you might think you write really good songs, but it's like that's not enough. If you're going
Yeah.
to be your own operating force, I mean, you have to learn how to mix, you have to learn how to promote and market, otherwise you're just not going to go anywhere with it, and that's sad, but it's just kind of where it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about Japan. You said
yes.
you've been learning Japanese.
Yep, a little bit. I took German in high school, and then I, for some reason, it's like maybe it's because I am at odds with the current state of the country, but I started to get really interested in Japan. My bass player in the band I was in college actually went out there to teach. Just as a thing to go do, and now he never wants to leave. Like he's over there and he's gonna basically stay there forever. And it was just like, I wonder what that's about. I mean, I've always been into Japanese video games and music and all that sort of stuff. So I was thinking, it's like, okay, well, I'm kind of bored. So there's a site called italki where you can actually learn Japanese from like a personal tutor. Like they're from Japan. Like you talk to them over Skype. It's really cool. And did like a trial lesson, and I really enjoyed it. Like I've been out of school for like 2 or 3 years now, and that drive to improve in something other than music is really good for me. I think, because it's really easy to get stuck in this whole idea of having a dead-end job and, dead-end life, and you're not really doing anything. So that personal enrichment aspect of it was what I got into initially. But as I started to learn more about the language, learn more about the culture, started watching anime, like some weeb trash, and I mean, that's one of the only things that I really enjoy doing right now is studying Japanese. I mean, it's definitely making me a more well-rounded person, I think.
Yeah, that's cool. I've done a few of the language things with Rosetta Stone.
Yes.
Just like the demos, and there was a period of time in my life where I was like, I wanted to think about learning a new language just as something to do, kind of like you were saying, just something to learn.
Yep.
So I kind of went through and demoed a lot of the different ones,
Yep.
and the Asian languages, the Chinese and the Japanese, were definitely the most foreign because there's like you're not even using the same alphabet.
Exactly.
Like I was looking at German and I'm like, well, German's okay. It's
Not
just
bad.
a lot of weird words.
Right.
It sounds like you're talking about farts a lot. It's like Frankenfurters.
Yeah, exactly.
And stuff
Yes.
like that. But for the most part, you're using letters that you're used to.
Right.
So, and I took Spanish in high school as the same sort of deal. But man, Japanese and Chinese, Mandarin. It's like I don't know. Are you learning to read those sort of? Or are you just doing the
You pretty much have to. I'll try to condense this as much as I can, but Japanese basically has 3 major alphabets, and calling them an alphabet might be a bit of a stretch too, because it's more of just like a writing system. Because they don't necessarily respond to one letter so much as a syllable. So a lot of it is like ra, re, ro, ri, ru, or like to, ta, te, stuff like that. So the main one that most people use is hiragana, which is about like 30-ish. But then they also have another one called katakana, which is mostly used for foreign words. The only annoying thing about that is they're all the same sounds, but the characters look different. So it's like, oh, okay, well, I have to learn 2 alphabets, right? That's not that bad. And then you can read. It's like you still need to learn the words, so it's still hard, but it's still kind of easy, right? It's like, no, because in addition to those 2 alphabets, they have the kanji characters, which is basically the equivalent of, in English, instead of writing out the word cat, you decided to draw a little doodle, which, if you do a lot of acid, might look like a cat. Maybe.
So it's not the greatest picture of a
It's really not. They
representation.
they say they're pictographic, but I mean, there's literally an entire book series that has been written called Remembering the Kanji, in which the entire content of the book is it shows you the character and then it tells you a ridiculous story to help you try to remember what it means. I mean, and the first one that I really, really liked, the kanji for above or up, kind of vaguely looks like a gravestone. So the little blurb from the book said, it's like, oh, you can remember this because it looks like the gravestones like you saw as a kid, or ideally in the graveyards you played in. I was like, oh, what? Is that a thing? Did people play in graveyards? But it's like he tells you a stupid story like that, or he says something that makes you laugh, and then I will never forget what that character means because all I'll think about is playing in a graveyard. And it's like, oh yeah, that means above. Cool. Thanks,
Maybe
James.
there's a method to the madness.
There really is. I mean, it does work. I mean, I think learning Japanese has gotten easier now than it ever has been with the advent of phone apps and stuff. I mean, I use Memrise for vocabulary, and then there's actually an app that allows you to study the pictograms, the kanji, it'll show you them, it'll tell you the meanings, you can do flashcards to study them, and you can actually draw them with your finger, and it'll tell you, it's like, yeah, that was right, that's what that means. I mean, it's just more ways to help you actually absorb it.
Yeah. So have they got the, do you know if they got the Fukushima stuff under control over there? I've heard the radiation levels are still off the chart. And, do you have any, I'm getting to, have you ever been to Japan or do you have plans of going to Japan? And
my life goal
question B is, do you have a concern about the nuclear radiation that's all over that island now?
Question B, no. I'm not concerned about the radiation because I don't plan on going anywhere near that area. Well, I set a life goal for myself when I turned 25 because it's like that's a big turning point in your life, right? It's like, oh my God, I'm 25. What am I doing? You know? So I decided that was like right when I started learning Japanese too. So I was like, okay, so by the time I'm 30, I want to ideally do both of these things, but I want to either be fluent in Japanese or I want to go there. So obviously going there, being fluent would be helpful
Right.
in being there. But yeah, so by the time I'm 30, I want to be fluent in Japanese and I want to have visited there at least once. As far as I know, the situation still isn't resolved as far as the nuclear radiation, but I can tell you that it's not a huge deal in the public space, at least as far as I'm concerned, because my interaction with Japanese people is limited to my buddy Chris, who is out there right now, and my teacher, who I speak to once every week and a half or so. And neither of them have ever said anything about that. They're more liable to bring up crazy things that have been happening in America than is happening in their own country. And maybe that's because they don't want to talk about it, or I think more likely it's because it's probably not as big of an issue at the moment as we think it is, but
Yeah.
I can't say for sure.
Yeah, it might be one of those things too where apparently they can't shut it off, but
Yeah.
and they can't really figure out how to. But they've been saying that the ground levels, if you take a Geiger counter and measure the ground levels, are a lot higher than like the air levels.
Okay.
But it could be one of those things where it may not affect people, or
Yeah.
we may see the effects in 20 years or something. Which either
Yeah.
way, I mean, I don't know. I've heard a lot of. I'd really like to go to Japan just because I've heard a lot about how the society is so polite and politeness
Yes.
is above all else.
Yep.
And it's like being in Manhattan, but everything's built straight up.
Right.
And everybody's like super polite and nice to each other, which is a really cool thing about their culture, I think.
Yeah, the thing that I like the most about society in Japan is that it's called like collectivism. Like everybody has an idea that they are themselves, but in the grand scheme of things, a society is a gigantic functioning unit. And everybody, regardless of whether or not you want to admit it, is a part of that unit. And you can either choose to help it or you can go against it. And for the most part, everyone in Japan has decided that they want to work together. I mean, I've heard stories of people going to visit, and this is why it's such a nice place to visit, because people aren't, for the most part, there's exceptions everywhere, but they aren't like anti-tourism, because people come out there and they give them money, which helps the society.
Yeah.
So you'll hear stories a lot of times of foreigners walking down the street. They don't know any Japanese. Someone will see you struggling and they'll come over and they'll talk to you in English. They'll be like, "Can I help you? What are you looking for?" And you'll say, it's like, "Oh, I'm looking for this place." And it turns out it's like 10 bus stops that way. And they'll like walk with you the whole way to make sure that you got where you needed to go. Because
Yeah.
that's just how people operate there. I mean, they really truly want to help everybody. And there's an idea that everyone is important and that everyone is part of why the society has flourished and thrived the way it has. And I mean, I feel like we could learn a lot from that out here, honestly.
Yeah. Have you checked out the Jiro Dreams of Sushi on Netflix? Have you seen that?
No.
That's a really cool. insight into Japanese culture, but it's
Oh, okay.
basically a Japanese master at sushi.
Oh, okay.
And he's spent he's like 80 or 90. This guy Jiro, he's spent his entire life really becoming a world-renowned sushi chef.
Sure.
And then he's got like his son. He's like in his 50s, and I think that like they do things like to cook an egg the correct way.
Yeah.
They train people for 4 or 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
to do
Definitely.
like it was really amazing. But I guess it's the I don't know if it's the Shoin philosophy or the Shogun.
I'm not familiar with the exact
something.
term, but
It's something where the idea is to be a master at one craft.
Oh, yeah,
And,
totally.
Like that is the goal, and a lot of Japanese follow that sort of philosophy in life, which is really cool because that's the sword makers.
yes,
and,
definitely.
the sushi makers, but
Well, and the thing is, America used to function that way. I mean, you would go to school for like maybe 6 or 7 years, but then you would take up a trade. You know, like people in the West, like you would go to school for a while and then you just become a blacksmith because it's what your dad did. You know, but we sold this idea of the American dream of it's like, oh, you don't have to necessarily follow in your parents' footsteps. You can do whatever you want. You know, it doesn't matter as long as you have enough money to make it happen. The world is your oyster, and it's like, that's good, but I wonder if we haven't lost anything in terms of our importance to society within that. But that's a whole other topic.
yeah. Well, Americans still fly around the 10,000 hours
of course.
philosophy,
Yeah.
which is, I think, a similar. Just you have to put in the time to become good at anything.
Oh,
really.
totally, absolutely.
But I think Americans just have so many options too, and the Japanese probably do too at this
Oh,
point.
yeah.
Do you think that is Japanese language, is it similar to Chinese in any way, or is it something that translates easily?
I haven't studied Chinese at all, so I can't say for sure. But I will say that the Japanese kanji, all of the characters were lifted from Chinese characters, and they have different meanings. So I think from studying Japanese for a while, I think that would make it extremely harder to go to Chinese from Japanese, because it would be like knowing your alphabet in English, but then if you started to learn German, all the letters are the same, but they make different sounds. I think that would be awful.
So it's almost like having to relearn all the things that you thought you knew, but they're now different.
Pretty much, yeah. And I mean, that is definitely, if you're trying to learn a language and you want it to be easy, do not pick one that has a different writing system. Just don't.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what we were talking about when we started the
Right.
language
Yep.
conversation. That was the cool thing about German and
Yeah.
Polish and
Yep. As long as the same sounds are there, you have a fighting chance.
yeah,
But I have kind of sort of gotten to the point where I can read hiragana decently, and that's mostly because the book that I use, it's called Romaji, so they use English letters to convey the sounds for like the first 2 chapters, and then they take it away.
and they take away the training wheels.
Yeah, yep, and then it's just like, well, you better learn how to read hiragana or you are not going to do this.
Yeah,
And it worked for me. My teacher told me right away, it's like, do not read anything in Romaji if you are serious about this. And I was like, okay, I will.
yeah.
And it's worked so far. I mean, I'm not thinking that I'm ever going to be done studying the language, but it would definitely be cool to get to a point where I could have like full-fledged conversations with other people, and I feel like I'm making decent progress in that.
Yeah.
So that makes me happy.
No, that's really cool. They say that learning a language opens up certain centers of the brain too that may not be activated.
Definitely. I've long
help
been
with
of
creativity.
I've long been of the opinion that music is itself another language. I mean, especially after going to music college, because I mean, the amount of classes they have on like the most mundane, or you think it's mundane. Like, I mean, I had 4 semesters of music theory, and it's like, jeez, that's like 2 years, and it's like, you can't tell me that that's not a language, because I mean, it has a writing system. First off, it's got a ludicrously long set of like rules in quotes because you don't have to follow them, but they exist so that you can be more eloquent. Honestly, I mean, because it's like, yeah, English has grammar rules, but you don't. It's like you don't have to follow them to speak English, but it's highly recommended that you do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people might not understand what you're trying to do.
Well, this ain't no English.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, so people might understand what you're saying, but they might think you're stupid too. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way of looking at it because
Right.
it is like, what certain chords will go together with each other,
Absolutely.
and where these will match up to make a good verse
Totally.
progression.
Yep.
So, yeah, if you're throwing in things that don't match up well, you can do it, but it's not going to be something that people may not want to listen to, or they may hear it and they may turn their head and think, oh, that sounds very weird.
Yep.
Like you're speaking the language very oddly.
Yeah, the two most valuable things that I learned in music college was, well, theory, first of all, but also they call it A skills. It's short for oral skills, which you might think is oral skills like speaking, and it's like, no, it's not. It's listening to music and like being able to hear like what notes are. It's like some people have perfect pitch and they don't need to do stuff like that, but the value of being able to hear a note and basically know about like where it sits is super helpful, especially if you're like me and you tend to hear like vocal lines or guitar parts in your head first, and then you have to transfer them to the instrument. That can be very challenging. So if you have that background and you're able to kind of pick notes out of the air, it's just like, not even if it's not totally perfect, it's just like you hear that and it's like, oh yeah, that sounds kind of close to like my open A string. So you mess with it and then you find it, and the better you get at that. I mean, I haven't struggled writing anything since I graduated from music college. I mean, they set you up so well for being able to just have a basic proficiency. And that's why I think it's like a language, because it's like I can totally say it. It's like I am very fluent in music. Like I have a very robust understanding of how it works, why it works, and how to make it work.
Cool. So you did you go to school in Ann Arbor? Is that-
Nope, actually went to Bowling Green State University for music.
okay.
Yep.
So you're right around the area then.
Yep.
Did you? I think I got a hold of you through Connor Mancini.
Yep,
from
yep, we went to
Music
school
Plug?
together. Yep.
Oh, cool. Did you guys? Did he do a piece with you on his website?
He did,
or-
yeah. He did a review
Profile?
for Nature Rejoices and a profile. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yep. Yep.
I'll have to check that out. So check out MusiPlug and
Yes.
look for the Biscuit Merchant.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, MusicPlug is a great
but-
site.
but,
It's really cool
you-
stuff.
You live in Ann Arbor.
Correct.
Is that-
Yes.
Yeah. How you like it up there?
It's beautiful. People say that it's like Portland and Seattle have kind of become the hipster place to move, and Ann Arbor is like our own little version of Portland.
Yeah.
It's kind of a hipster
It's a
town.
cool little town.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: since you came from Bowling Green, did
Yeah.
you go to Ann Arbor specifically because there's a Mr. Spots there as well?
I'm not going to lie, that factored into my decision. Not really, but
For those of you that don't know, that's the awesome steak shop that
Yes.
exists in Bowling Green
Yep.
and Ann Arbor, and I believe that's the only two locations.
yeah, I don't think it's anywhere else.
But
yeah.
infamously, Tom Brady ordered them for one of the Super Bowls
Oh, yeah.
for his entire starting line,
yeah.
offensive line. I believe he had him ship
Yeah.
Mr. Spots Philly steak
I
sandwiches.
heard that. It was a nice surprise. I was up there. It was the first couple weeks that I was up there, and I was looking through my Eat Street app because I wanted something to eat, like you do. And I was scrolling through, and I saw Mr. Spots, and I was like, "What? Like it's still stuck on Bowling Green? Damn it!" So
Yeah.
it was like I changed it, and I was like, "No, that's so, what? Oh, like there's another one." I honestly didn't even know it existed up there. But it
How's
does.
how's the music scene up there? Do you check it out much? Get to the Arc or anything? Or?
I like the Arc a lot. The Arc caters more towards touring musicians.
Yeah,
Than
they're a pretty
local groups,
pretty big
but-
time venue.
Yeah.
I got to play at their open mic that
Oh,
they
cool.
do. They do it like
Yeah.
every third something of the
Yeah,
week.
I need to get out to that more often because it's a great room for that. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
it was
very
really-
small. It's very intimate. I saw Adrian Belew, who has played with a bunch of different bands. He's played with Frank Zappa. He's played with King Crimson. He had like this little power trio that he took on a tour, and they played at the Arc. And I was looking through the newspaper, which tells you how old this was, and I saw it's like Adrian Belew brings his King Crimson prowess to the Arc. I was like, what? So this was still when I was living in Bowling Green, so I drove up for that, and it was awesome.
Yeah. No, it's a really
yeah.
cool room. It's
It
real
is,
small.
yeah.
It's nice, like listening acoustics.
Yep.
It's pretty much made for that.
The sad thing is the only other major venue that's up there is the Blind Pig, and it's a great room. But I don't know. I tried to get my band up there to play there, and they never responded to me on the booking. But maybe they just thought we sucked. But that's very possible.
I think it's just booking in general. It's so hard to book gigs.
It's the worst. That's honestly, I think that's probably the number one reason that I don't want to do any live stuff right now is because I have gotten so jaded to the overall music scene and all that stuff and the marketing and the promo and the dealing with promoters, which I mean, I've met some great people doing promotion, like my buddy Cody Sizemore, who does the stuff in Toledo. Dude's awesome. But at the same time, there's so much work that goes into it. And at some point when you arrive at a venue at 10 a.m. and you don't play until 11 p.m., you start to question what you're doing with your life.
Yeah, there's always that hurry up and wait.
Hurry up and wait. Absolutely.
Get there for load in 3 hours early. It'll take 10 minutes to load in, and then we're just going to sit here.
And the thing that I'm referring to is my band, the Kerplunks, played at the Toledo Music Fest for the second time we did. And it was exactly that case. It's like load-in was at 9 a.m. and we weren't on until like 9 at night. And I was just sitting there the whole time. It was like, there is just no way that this is worth it. But it has a happy ending because that was the best show we ever played. Like, there were so many people out there and they were all so totally into it. And I was just like, yeah, okay, this is why we do this.
Yeah.
But, you know.
And maybe you were a little pissed off from waiting around all day, too. That usually helps.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had a lot of pent-up energy. That whole show is actually online. My buddy Zach was there, and he filmed almost the whole thing. I think his phone ran out of battery for the last song, but he filmed almost all of it. And, I mean, it was, you could tell we were ready to go.
That was with the Kerplunks?
Yep, correct.
That was the band that you were in before?
Yep, and if anyone's looking into that expecting progressive metal, don't. That was actually a ska band.
Oh, wow.
That I played in college, yeah. Connor was actually going to play trumpet with us at one point, but it didn't end up working out, I think, because he was going to play with Indian Opinion instead.
Yeah.
But, another awesome BG band that I miss terribly.
Yeah. So, were you the guitar player?
Yes. Yep, I did guitar, and that was all I wanted to do. I just wanted to do guitar. I didn't want to sing. I didn't want to do anything. And then by the end of it, Josh, the main singer, and I were pretty much splitting lead vocals. But that was good because that gave me the ammunition that I needed to do my progressive metal project. So in the liner notes for one of my CDs, it says, special thanks to Josh Cox for teaching me how to sing and making this possible.
Yeah. Cool. Yep. So would you say progressive metal, is that your favorite sort of music for sure? Yeah.
Absolutely. I like punk. I like ska.
Well, let me ask you about this because I'll tell you my favorite band of all time.
Yeah.
And it may tiptoe into your genre very slightly, but I love Tool.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yep.
What do you think of, like, is that progressive metal? I kind of think of them as like art rock almost, but
it's close enough.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm a big Danny Carey fan.
Oh, of course, he's a monster. Yeah. Every dude in that band is very talented at what they do. I think that's why they've succeeded so well.
Yeah, they've kind of become a lot more mainstream than a lot of other people from that genre.
Yeah, definitely. Like. Yeah, I mean, I'll still put on Lateralis every now and again. I mean, there's some decently heavy stuff on there. I mean, it's definitely got its roots in progressive music. I mean, they play in 7 a lot. There's a lot of odd time signatures going on.
Yeah.
Very artful song structures. I mean, that's all stuff that I pay attention to when I'm doing my own stuff. So, I mean.
I like Danny Carey. He's always got those weird polyrhythms going on the drums.
Yep.
A lot of people say he's like the godfather of polyrhythms. I don't know if that's true or not.
I would give that to the drummer of Meshuggah over anybody else.
Yeah,
but.
You know what? I've seen Meshuggah open for Tool.
Oh, yeah. That's a great bill.
Two different concerts.
That fits really nicely, I think.
Yeah. There was one, I can't remember where I was, but it was Tool open, or Meshuggah open for Tool.
Yep.
And then Danny Carey came out, or the Meshuggah drummer came out during Tool, and they did a dueling drum solo.
I would actually die if I saw that.
Yeah, it was
That's awesome.
It was pretty intense.
Yeah.
And being a drummer, I was just like blown away. But
yeah,
it was really cool.
Yeah, I've been getting into the. I've had a 7-string guitar for about 5 years now, so I've been looking into getting an 8 or a 9, probably a 9.
That's very progressive of you.
Do you think? Yeah, that was hilarious. We actually went into the a music store the other day in Ann Arbor, and there was like I walked through the door and the dude immediately was like, "Oh, I think we found a guy to play the 9-string," and I was like, "What?" Like I didn't even know that there was a 9-string out yet, so I was like, "Okay," and then I picked it up and I started playing on it, and it's a Schecter, which is what I play on at home. So I mean, it was exactly the same as playing my guitar at home. So I was just like shredding the hell out of this thing, and the dude was like, "Do you like it?" I was like, "Yeah." But yeah, I am a firm believer in the 9-string guitar, and I didn't know it existed for about an hour until I had made that claim.
So with the 9-string, is it 3 lower strings
Yep.
than what you would normally have?
Yep. So the standard 6-string everyone knows goes E A D G B E. The 7-string adds a low B, and then there's a low F sharp on the 8, and then it's another 4th. So
H. No.
yeah, H. That's right. No. So F sharp. You can do this. You went to music college, right? Didn't you?
No.
It would be another. I think it's a C. I guess. No, that would be a tritone.
My music theory sucks.
It's a D flat, C sharp. Got it.
Cool.
But yeah, it's disgustingly, crushingly low.
Yeah.
And
so if you play in that string, there's no way to write happiness.
I mean, you might be able to do it if you were using a major scale, but I don't know why you would.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing that came out when I played on the low string is it's just like you hear that booming like bass note, and it's like, how are you supposed to do anything other than like Black Sabbath riffs on this?
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't work. But
Yeah, sometimes that's the only thing that fits.
right. Yeah.
That's the same thing. Sometimes when I'm coming up with melodies to sing over,
Oh, yeah.
over a riff or whatever, it's like the only melody that's gonna fit that sounds cool here, or the only one that I can come up with,
Yeah.
is it's got to be angry, or it's got to
Yes.
be a certain sort of feel to it. Seems like.
Yeah, I will fully disclose that if there's ever a section in my music where it turns into an extended period of like the low growling vocals, 9 times out of 10 it's because I couldn't come up with a good melody. It's just I really don't do that just to cop out, because I do like the tone of the low, like the death metal growl, but there's definitely no denying it's a lot easier to write lyrics to something that doesn't have to fit into a melody.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason, I always end up, I kind of think of melody first, and that's kind of where my starting point is.
Yeah, right.
So I end up always trying to form lyrics to fit into a melody that I have already made.
Right.
Because I like the melody.
No, of course.
Which
yeah.
is always a challenge, because then you're not truly expressing yourself. You're really just making words to form syllables. I mean, that's the challenge, is what can you make lyrics that make sense, that you mean to say,
Yep.
that also fit the melody?
I think it's a lot
forever.
easier to do lyrics to the melody. I find a lot of times there's a band that I really, really like and that I'm about to harshly criticize called Between the Buried and Me. I love their music. I hate the way that they fit their lyrics into their music because it is very obvious that they write the lyrics first.
Yeah.
And then they just they shoehorn and ham-fist it in there as hard as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And if you read along with the lyrics to the music, it sounds disjointed and just bad.
Yeah, that's one of my sort of pet peeves, but I see that a lot with local musicians or songwriters that may be just starting out, or they may not be quite as adept as they could be. But a lot of times, yeah, they're trying to smash in certain, because they have lyrics in mind that they want to sing, and they may not fit the melody, but they're going to put them in there anyways.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's the first thing that I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't like this.
I much prefer a melody over lyrics. I can deal with cringy lyrics. I listen to power metal. Like, it's not a problem for me. So I would rather have a good melody with dumb lyrics than good lyrics with a dumb melody, because I don't think it'll ever work.
Honestly, I hear a lot of that to criticize a little bit of like 89X sort of radio these days. But a lot of those mainstream bands that are on the radio, I hear a lot of that sort of like forced lyrical content.
Yeah.
I can't think of an example offhand, but I know that there's things where I hear where it's like, oh, that just sounds like they're just almost like they're placating to a certain audience that they're looking for.
Yeah. Well, back in the mid 2000s when I started getting into metal, I started out getting into stuff that was on 89X, like Slipknot, Mudvayne, Korn, Disturbed, stuff like that.
Changed completely.
Oh
now.
yeah, well they did, but the thing is, it's like I would go online and I would want to talk to other people about these bands, and they were always just like, shut up, like those bands are terrible. And I didn't understand at the time. I was like, this is so heavy, this is so aggressive. And then someone showed me Cannibal Corpse one day and I literally never looked back. I was like, oh. Because man, if you go, regardless of how you feel about Cannibal Corpse, if you go from Slipknot to Cannibal Corpse, that's a jump.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's funny
that
you mentioned Slipknot. I don't know if you're a big Slipknot fan or not, but his other band, Corey Taylor, I think that's his name.
Yeah, yep, Stone Sour.
Stone Sour.
Yep.
I can't stand that band.
Oh, really?
And everybody loves it, and I feel like it's part of everybody loves Slipknot, and so
Right.
anything. But Corey Taylor, and I heard he's a great guy, and if he actually heard this, I would be super embarrassed, and I would. I'm like the YouTube commenter that's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were going to comment back."
All right,
But I don't like his songwriting with Stone Sour. I feel like he does that where he slips in those lyrics that are unnecessary. Like I heard that looking at you through the glass.
Oh God,
I hate that song.
I don't like that one
I
either.
hated it the first time I heard it.
Yeah.
Everybody loved it, and I'm like, and then they just came out with their new album maybe 6 months ago or whatever that they had stuff playing on the radio, and I hated those songs. I'm like, God, he's a terrible lyricist in these songs. But you know, I can tell that you're a big fan of Slipknot, so I don't want to. I'm treading on thin ice here.
Not really. I mean, I have long grown past the phase of hating other people because of their musical opinions.
Well,
Life is just too short.
I could go down the same road with like I'm a huge Tool fan.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'll say Pussifer is pretty good just because I like Maynard.
Yeah, right.
But the reality is,
Yeah.
I could probably not listen to Pussifer. And I feel like Stone Sour is that same way with a lot of Slipknot fans.
You get that with a lot of side projects, I think. I mean, bands will go out and they'll do these super groups that just, they have all this hype because it's like, oh, there's all these awesome musicians all together. And it's like the thing you forget is that awesome musicians usually develop a pretty giant ego. And that's not to say that everybody does, but I mean, it's like it's that too many cooks philosophy. It's like a lot of really successful bands had like one key songwriter. And if you put all four songwriters from four awesome bands together in a room, you're not necessarily going to get awesome songs. You're going to get a lot of scattershot, weird ideas that don't make any sense among each other because those guys haven't had a time to really gel like they did with their original band. But
Yeah, it's kind of like putting an all-star team together.
Exactly. It's like I mean, sure, it might sell records, but it's like, has there ever been a time where a supergroup has like exceeded the the scope of the original project where all the other dudes came from? I don't think so.
Yeah,
I can't think of one.
Not, no.
Yeah. So if we're still talking about Tool, odds over under, Tool releases a new album before 2020.
Ooh. I think they will.
You think so? Okay.
I think they're working on it. Like it's one of those things that it may take forever. But if you would have said 2018 or 19, I would have said
Probably
no.
not.
But
Yeah.
I think 2020 might be the year.
Okay. I think they've probably been working on it for a while, but I'm not convinced that it's ever gonna come out.
I've seen Maynard talking on I think Joe Rogan, and he was explaining the process. And basically, Justin Chancellor and I can't think of the guitar player's name at the moment.
I can't either. Kelly something? I might be crazy.
Well, they're basically in a room writing songs, throwing them in the trash, writing another song, throwing them in the trash, and that's kind of his process. And I think at this point he's probably got such a feeling of pressure to the Tool army of people that are like, you know, they don't want him to ruin anything, so they want him to come out with this great music. And I think that pressure is just like, I got to write something better, something better.
I think the problem is it's been too long now. I mean, it's been 12 years since 10,000 Days, and I mean, it's a good record. But I think sooner or later you have to resign yourself to the fact that no matter what you release, a good portion of your fan base is going to adore it no matter what you do. And another portion of your fan base is going to hate you for either selling out or abandoning your ideals. Because, I mean, none of Tool's albums sound exactly the same. I mean, they've evolved a lot. And if you think they're going to just do another 10,000 Days after 12 years, I don't think you're going to be happy.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, well, the way Maynard's talking is he's just kind of waiting for him to give him something. And he says that they'll send him a track, and he'll listen to it, and he'll think of the ideas for the lyrics, and then like 2 weeks later they'll come back to him and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we got rid of that song. That's like done." So that's kind of the hold up, I think. But,
yeah, that's got to be frustrating.
Yeah, but then again, they have a big catalog of music already, and they are touring. They're doing a lot of festivals and things like that. So,
well, anyone who is frustrated. If you're a frustrated Tool fan and you're like, man, I wish my favorite artist would release albums more than once every decade. I have done 2 so far since April of 2017, and I'm showing no signs of stopping. So if you want to jump on, now is the time.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, man, let's wrap this up.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Check out Biscuit Merchant.
Yep, The Biscuit Merchant on Spotify. I am at Bisc Merch, so BISCMERCH on Twitter. I update regularly. I just posted a Twitter poll about what kind of publicity stunt I should do on live stream to gain publicity and Spotify followers, so please go vote on that.
Cool. And that's a one-man progressive metal project.
Yep.
So it's really interesting to listen to one guy doing all that stuff.
It's like Devin Townsend in a can. That's the nicest thing I can say about myself.
Very cool, very cool. Justin Lawn Chair.
That's
everybody.
me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, no problem.